You will give me the link to ask to send it to my students and to the people.
You
Like,
mean the YouTube
yeah,
link?
YouTube link.
Let me grab it for you very quick.
Thank you.
Just give me a couple of seconds.
Where,
Oh.
where are
Okay.
you right now, Dr. Range? Are you in
Okay.
UK, right?
I'm in a
Dum,
small
dum,
village,
dum, dum. In the
about
meantime,
30
oh
minutes
yeah, go
away from
ahead, go ahead.
Oxford, called Kerbridge. But the nearest town is Whitney. So this is like a village of three roads. Um,
Cool.
and
Okay.
Whitney is a kind of smallish town. It takes about
Uh,
15 minutes to drive from one side to the other.
just a moment because
Nearest
You
big
you
city is
have to
Oxford.
stay nearby Cambridge.
No, Cambridge is miles away.
Uh,
Well, for the UK anyway.
from the UK,
My wife's
yes.
from Chile, so they do distance slightly differently in Chile from in the UK because it's rather larger and rather longer. Yeah, about 40 minutes from Oxford, probably
Okay,
three
I,
and a
I
half
want
hours
to
from
go to
Cambridge.
Oxford. Actually, I've been in London with my girlfriend uh once. I live in Scotland for like 8 years, so obviously
Yeah.
in Edinburgh, and I know around. But England, I want to jump out and meet some people. Uh, just 1 minute last and be back. Okay, and let me know when we
okay.
will start.
Yeah, definitely. No worries. Okay, Dr. Andrew. So this is gonna be 1 hour, 1 hour, and let's say 1 hour and a half. Okay, and we want to respect your time, and we're going to follow that path. Okay. So everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. Today we have a special guest here in the podcast. Of course, we're talking about Dr. Andrew Angel. Dr. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. How is UK treating you?
Oh, the UK is all right. It's rumbling on as it tends to do. So all very exciting at the moment.
Would you recommend to both of us to go and spend some vacations in the UK?
Oh yeah, UK is beautiful. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
And there are some extraordinarily lovely
he's super
places
biased by now.
over here.
At least, at least with the weather, probably will be better than in Scotland up there.
It's further down south. It's a little bit better, but the rainy weather does produce a very beautiful set of islands. So
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so everybody, just buckle up. We're going to start this interview in a conversational way as we do things here. But first, we're going to hit the intro. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Marv, coming to you from Honduras. This is your Verano 1711 podcast where we talk about religion because it's important, but we critically analyze it because that's even more important. Today, we are joined by Dr. Andrew Angel. We're going to be discussing his book, which is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Andrew, this is a revision, a monograph, a revision of your dissertation, correct? Am I right with that?
it is. It's a very light revision, as was
Hmm.
pointed out by one reviewer,
Yeah.
who felt it read a bit too much like a PhD dissertation. But my examiner said, "Look, publish it as is. Don't change anything. You've got the rest of your life to work on all the things you want to work on. So go publish." So it is substantially the doctoral thesis. Yes.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And we're glad to having him on the show. We're gonna be, throwing those questions, and Dr. Andrew is ready to address those ones and much more. Today, also, I'm joined by my co-special host, Joshua from Indiana. Joshua is like God. He's everywhere.
Hello,
I'm
how
kidding.
are you?
How are you doing? How is Indiana treating you, my buddy?
Ah,
Is it
well,
okay?
good, good. The weather here is amazing. I mean, I'm here visiting my father. I will be here like for probably half of June. As I like it. I like it. I mean, I've been in the United States before, but just in Orlando and going to the parks. This time, I'm just properly doing tourism here, and I'm very happy. Yes, I'm always around. I will be in a month again back into Lisbon, and I will go to Ireland on the way back, and probably in Scotland in July. So you will see me around as always.
Look at that. Okay. All right, people. So we're gonna be diving into this book. I mean, I saw the title, Dr. Andrew, and immediately that caught my attention. Like, we love Joshua and I. We love Chaoskampf, the divine warrior, wrestling with the ancient dragon creature, like everything. So we're all for it. And today we're gonna be talking about your book. Okay, it came out in 2006, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct.
It's been a while. It's been a while. And as we were discussing off camera, the literature is growing and growing and growing, and it's even impossible for one person to master even their own field. Imagine how much literature has been published on this topic specifically. I hope you've been doing like the catching up with all of that as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the specific area which I've studied is quite as large as you say. It may be that I'm missing lots of books and lots of articles, but the research into Chaoskampf, I mean, chaos is a bit out at the moment as a phrase. There have been some objections to that by there's a series of essays by Skurlock and Beale where a number of them are saying we shouldn't be using the word chaos. So I tend to call it divine warrior myth nowadays, which doesn't cause as much contention. There's been a lot of study of the divine warrior myth in the Old Testament since Hermann Gunkel's Chaos and Creation, 1895. But most of the study seems to have focused precisely on the Old Testament. I mean, Gunkel himself did focus a little bit on 6 texts from Second Temple Judaism, but not much more. Obviously, the study was of the Book of Revelation as well, so there was a focus there, and a lot of commentaries on Revelation do a lot of work in this area. But more widely in Second Temple Judaism, there hasn't been so much. I am pleased that there's been a book by Deborah Scoggins Ballantyne, Conflict Myth and the Biblical Tradition, which spends probably as much time in Second Temple Judaism and the New Testament and rabbinic literature as it does in the Old Testament. And I was delighted. I mean, the book that I really like that's come out since mine, Robert Miller's The Dragon, the Mountain and the Nations, has a significant amount on Second Temple Judaism and the New Testament. But one of the reasons that I wrote the book was because I was fascinated by the debate between the likes of Tom Wright and the likes of Dale Allison over exactly what theophanic language means when related to the saying in Mark 13, 24 to 27 and parallels. And I was scouring around for works on the theophany of the divine warrior and exactly how we should understand that mythology in Second Temple Judaism. And I found there to be a dearth of books. And discussing with both my internal and external supervisors, I had 2 my doctoral theses, they said, well, seems to us you have found an area of research. Go study. And so that's really how the book came about. And I isolated, in my reading of Second Temple Judaism, about 140 texts. That's too much for a doctoral thesis. I only studied 42, and I only got to study 42 because they they allowed the not normally over 100,000 words thesis rule at Nottingham University to mean not normally. So I was able to get away with 130,000 words in the thesis. And I'd say probably most of the commentary on divine warrior myth in Second Temple Judaism is found as incidental comments and commentaries. I can give you an example, which I'm not sure I agree with. Michael Stone's magnificent commentary on 4 Ezra, where he talks about the use of this sort of divine warrior language to describe the man from the sea in 4 Ezra 13, and says the myth is no. He doesn't use these exact words, but basically no longer operative. It's colourful language, which I couldn't disagree with more. If I'm honest, I think the myth is alive and well in this period. There's a great article by Adele Arbor Collins on the Testament of Moses, chapter 10, where she studies divine warrior myth in that particular chapter of that particular pseudepigraphon. And again, it sort of works in this area that help you to understand what's going on. But my doctorate was a collecting exercise. I've not really come across, either in Miller or in Ballantine, any fresh research into the texts which I've collated, which I haven't researched myself. So I think there's still quite a bit of work yet to be done. And possibly I ought to get on with some of that research myself, as I've identified that. I've just been writing
I think that is waiting for you.
Right.
Maybe an updated version. I don't know of your book.
Well, possibly. I mean, I'm at the moment using it because, again, one of the people who wrote a review, Ben Reynolds, who's done quite a lot of work on the Son of Man, said, great book. It would have been lovely, though, to read more about the Son of Man and the way we understand the Son of Man within the context of divine warrior myths. So that's what I'm focused on at the moment. I've been a few other projects in between, but I'm focused on that at the moment. So looking at further texts, we'll have to wait for a little while because that could be a next project after the current one.
I can see that's maybe the path forward here. So, Dr. Andrew, before we can continue here, if you can give us a bit of a background, who you are, your credentials. I understand you graduated from University of Nottingham. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, I read theology first of all, University of Oxford. I spent some time as a teacher before becoming a priest in the Church of England. When I trained to be a priest in the Church of England in Nottingham, and part of my training was to do a doctorate, and that's where I came to study University of Nottingham. And I had Maurice Casey as my external supervisor.
Yeah,
very interesting because I was disagreeing with his work. And I had a scholar called Steve Travis as my internal supervisor. Yeah. So between them, they helped me to find my way into Second Temple Judaism and into the kind of text that I've been studying. So that's the short version of the story. I can tell you plenty more, but that probably is enough detail.
There's definitely more to it. So just to get in the weeds here, the basic question in every interview: how this book came to be? What was the process? How you decided to? Okay, this is the topic, and here's we're going to be drilling down deeper.
Well, it started with my wrestling with the question of what we do with Jesus, Son of Man, sayings in Mark 13, because I don't find it plausible to say the Son of Man will come on clouds in glory in verse 26, and then to say a little bit later, these things will happen before this generation passes away, and to assume that somehow we can wriggle out of the problem. I'm aware there are some people who want to say that these things refer to things before the Son of Man coming, but reading the text sequentially, I don't find that a plausible solution. So, as an undergraduate, I thought I can see the issue brought up by Albert Schweitzer and others, that it would appear that Jesus either got this wrong, or the Son of Man coming doesn't refer to the second coming. Now, I was studying sociology of knowledge at the same time with a wonderful scholar called Brian Wilson at All Souls College, Oxford, who introduced me into the world of Durkheim's sociology of religion.
Yeah.
And the idea that religion is a hypostatization of society made me think, this looks like this is what's going on in this Old Testament myth, which I was studying with John Day at the same university at the same time.
Yeah.
And rather than it being fundamentally about creation, which is what John Day has argued, the more I read through the Old Testament uses of the myth, the more it seemed to refer to the politics of Israel, which made me think, hang on a moment, I think that reading this text with Durkheimian eyes may well make more sense of it. Now, at the same time, I was studying New Testament with Tom Wright. So when I did my Son of Man essay and came across the idea that the destruction of Jerusalem might be what Jesus is talking about when he says that the Son of Man will come in glory, I thought, if you put the identification of this myth as what John Day called Chaoskampf, what I would now call, despite the title of my book, the subtitle of my book, rather, what I would now call Divine Warrior Myth, if you put that together with the Durkheimian idea that this mythology is fundamentally about the creation of the political order, then actually Jesus relating it to the politics of Israel makes an awful lot of sense. Now, between the time that I had those ideas as an undergraduate and coming to study it for my doctoral thesis, Nick Wyatt had been doing quite a lot of work on Ugaritic myth and its relationship to Hebrew myth in the Old Testament, and had been arguing very much that it was fundamentally a political myth and about the establishment of kingship. So by the time I got to, it was a great essay he wrote, Arms on the King, where he starts with our earliest instance of Chaoskampf, divine warrior myth in the ancient Near East, and then moves forward. So by the time I got to do my doctoral study, the debate had moved on somewhat. And this had been picked up. I mentioned Deborah Scoggins-Ballantyne, Conflict, Myth and Biblical Tradition. Although she's not using Durkheim, she's using other sociologists as her framework for reading. She comes out with a substantially very, very similar reading, that the myth is fundamentally about political legitimation. So I got to start my doctoral study and began to ask the question, well, where are the studies of divine warrior myth in Second Temple Judaism, so that I'm able to work out whether it is fundamentally about creation, as I was taught as an undergraduate, or whether it's fundamentally about the establishment of the political order, or whether it's fundamentally about something else. There were articles about the myth, there were comments, as I said earlier, about the myth in commentaries, but I couldn't find a study. So I thought, if I'm to get anywhere near answering the question, is Jesus using the language of the theophany of the divine warrior in Mark 13:24-27, and parallels to refer to the politics of Israel, then I need to do a thorough study. Now, I know that Tom Wright in New Testament God has done a 13, 14-page study, I think it is. Forgive me, there are more pages there. He's a great scholar, where he brings out a number of texts and says, look, this cosmic catastrophe language, as he calls it, is all about major political events. I'm aware, as are most, that Dale Allison has responded and said, well, if you look at this language across different cultures, it looks like it's being used to refer to more catastrophic end of the world events. And we know that debate rumbles on. Eddie Adams wrote a book responding to Tom Wright, which Dale Allison affirmed as a good book, suggesting that this is about cosmic catastrophe. I remain unconvinced that we've really done enough study in this area, asking, number one, reading the text in context, what do they look like they're saying? Because the 42 texts I studied in Chaos and the Son of Man look very much like the majority of them are about the construction of the political order, not the present construction of the created order, or indeed about so-called eschatological events. John Collins quite rightly critiqued me in an otherwise very kind review for not defining what I meant by eschatological events. I can define that later in the conversation if you like.
He was on the show as well. Yeah.
I don't think we've studied the text in context, nor have we critiqued the different ways in which we approach myth as scholars. There are some people who are using Fraserian ideas of myth. So a lot of the people in the myth and ritual school in the 1930s are basically using the kind of idea of myth you get in Sir James Fraser's Golden Bough. We do have an honest account in Ballantine as to where she's coming from sociologically, but we haven't really discussed whether her model of the sociology of knowledge is as good as the one that's being used by Nick Wyatt. And they're both in very much the political legitimation framework. We haven't really critiqued the models being used by John Day and were used by Frank Cross and many of his followers, who were fundamentally reading this as cosmogony. And what do we mean by that? And is that fundamentally about the natural order or fundamentally about the political order? And if they intertwine, how far do they intertwine? Nor have we looked at the way this myth has been used by, of all people, Jordan Peterson, who does get a very quick critique in Bob Miller's Dragon Mountains and Nations, who reads the myth through a psychoanalytical framework. And to be honest, why shouldn't we, if we're using other frameworks for reading the myth, add psychoanalytical readings to the list and work out which ones make best sense of the text, and ask how the text speaks back, or the texts rather, because there are many of them, speak back to the particular hermeneutical lenses through which people are reading the myth. I think there's a lot more work to be done on the assumed hermeneutics of those studying the myth. And I can't find it anywhere. I won't quote which senior scholar, but I did write to a senior scholar who's very experienced in this area, and knows another very senior scholar quite closely, and said that they would have a conversation and come back to me, and they were unable to locate between them a study of this nature. So I think we're jumping the gun, to be honest, when we're all absolutely sure we know what Mark 13:24-27 is about because of the assumptions we make about what myth's about. I've probably said enough. You probably ask me another question.
I'm fascinated.
I did warn you I'll bang on forever, given
no, that's okay. I am a psychology student, and I'm connecting with you like, go on, don't stop.
Well, then,
Because,
then
yeah.
very happily,
Okay, I need to say this, Dr. Andrew, because I might forget it, and I'm stating this in this way because uh, Joshua, I don't know you, but I mean, you just like me. We read it through the literature. We try to do as best as we can, and we're not scholars. Dr. Andrew, he is a legitimate scholar, but I mean, have you ever run into this perspective, like taking in considerations all these aspects that Dr. Andrew is bringing to the table here on this side of the discussion on the myth? Because I haven't. I would be lying. I mean, not to this point. That's why I'm just jaw dropping. Because hey, creation really might be the case that is, also containing the political realm, including in there. It's a double entendre significance. That's very interesting, and it would make much more sense because it's something, yeah, that you can find in the other myths to some extent. It's political is always there. Remember, I'm not quite sure what scholar said this, but he says in the ancient world, religion is politics, politics is religion. Okay, so that to me, it's new to me. I must confess, true confessions here. So Joshua, what do you have to say about that?
I think uh, I did found when we speak about mythology, the people straight away jumped into the mythology. Well, yeah, fiction, and it's not related to anything that is actually true. But the problem is we forgot that for the ancient world, mythology is a way to speak the story, and it's a way to tell the reality they are living in. For example, mostly, specifically talking about Chaoskampf, we cannot deny that the Chaoskampf is a way to explain the supremacy of a god. Why this god is more important? Because he is basically the central figure of the Chaos conflict at the beginning. For example, in creation, Enuma Elish, for example, it's like we cannot deny that that's a way to explain why this god is more important. And I can be more agree that when we approach to the Bible, we need to realize that the way they explain the stuff is actually the way we will have the key to understand how they see the world, how they see the cosmology, at least. Um, I like that, Doctor. I don't know if you prefer to be called Andy.
Oh, just call me Andy, please.
Andy.
Thank you.
I
Thank
with
you.
all this toxic
Go with
stuff. Just
Andy.
call me Andy.
No, great. Andy was speaking about Jordan Peterson. It's funny because yesterday
Yeah.
I was talking with my grandma about because she likes psychology a lot, and I say you should find you should try to find those books. She speaks Spanish, so I know Jordan Peterson have few books in Spanish, and I realized that he have a new one right now. It's called Wrestling with God, and I want it. I want it. It's like just recent, and it's in Spanish as well. And I say good because he's speaking about these concerns about the way we approach to chaos concept as well. And it's funny because we could understand chaos camp not only related to the culture, but at least related to our as human beings. We know what is fighting with the chaos. So it's interesting that it's a reflection to something they see outside themselves. It's like there is chaos around, and this is order. It's like some two sides of the same coin. I don't know if I'm making myself clear with this.
Yeah, and I'd love to pick up on that, but could I just pick up on something that's
Sure.
coming at the bottom of the screen from Las Dos Caras del Misterio?
Yeah. Let me put it right there.
Okay. Absolutely right about the word myth. Does have negative connotations, and I need to make it clear that because I've used that word a lot, that when I say myth, I don't mean untrue, nor do I mean fable. I mean a complex language beyond what even the most mobile metaphor, or capable of doing, what even the most mobile metaphors cannot do, in capturing a reality in a way that speaks not just to the cognition, the sort of the mind, but also to the affective side of our nature, and enables us to capture a truth more broadly. Now that's not a full or substantive definition of myth, but I hope it helps at least that particular person to understand that I do agree that it is a way, I don't know if there's a literary genre, but it's a way of speaking which is full of very rich symbolism, and very mobile symbols which can change over time and be used in different ways at the same time. And I'll pick up on the next comment and respond to what Joshua said. Am I okay to call you Joshua?
Yeah, you can call me Joshua.
In terms of the way these different ways of understanding this myth work, if I go back to Psalm 74, there's it's a lament. The temple has been destroyed.
Okay, let me put it on the screen.
There is an awful lot of upset, and anger and bitterness that's coming out in the psalm as the psalmist takes us through the ruins of the temple, crying out to God, why have you let this happen, and how long will your enemies triumph over you? And then by the time we get to verses 12 to 17, we have this extraordinary, what some people think is a change of tone. I don't agree with that. But this extraordinary section which starts yet, God my King is from old, working salvation in the earth. You divided the sea by your might. You broke the heads of the dragons in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. That's a key dragon of the literature. You gave him as food for the creatures of the wilderness. You cut open springs and torrents. You dried up overflowing streams. Yours is the day. Yours is the night. You established the luminaries in the sun.
That's
you have
creation language.
The earth. You made summer and winter. And then it goes on fairly miserably. Remember this, O God, how the enemy scoffs and an impious people reviles your name. Now, what's happening here in those 5 verses is that we're revisiting the myth. And one of the reasons for revisiting the myth is that the myth has been used from Israel's earliest literature. The Song of the Sea in Exodus 15 is likely to be one of the earliest pieces of literature written in early Israel's history, which uses the myth to describe God rescuing the people of Israel out of Egypt. That use of the myth is reprised in Psalm 77, as well as other places in the Psalms of the Prophets. So it's natural, when seeing the political devastation of the nation and the religious devastation of the nation, to bring the myth up. Now, the myth is also used to describe creation, and we can see that here. That might be going on in Genesis 1:1 to 2:4a. Debate about that, but it's certainly going on in Psalm 104. And there's, to the best of my knowledge, not so much debate about that. So the psalmist here is kind of using this myth to say, okay, God, if you're the God that's created the whole universe, why are we in such a mess? And if you're the God who kills Leviathan, which is so often about you rescuing the nation, why is the nation in such a mess? And the psalmist is also bringing the language into the world of ritual lament. So there's a part of the language which is doing something which is fundamentally psychological. It's enabling the people to come to terms with the devastation of their situation, with the idea that God has completely abandoned them, and to reread the myth in the light of their reality and the massive amounts of cognitive dissonance that's created. You know, what we believe in God is miles away from the reality we're experiencing. And the myth is doing triple service. It's talking about creation, it's talking about politics, and it's bringing this into the psychology of the nation and the psychology of the individuals within the nation, and asking the question at each level, God, why are you failing to create? God, why are you failing to create the covenant political order? God, why are you failing to give us the worship in which we connect with you. God, why are you failing to create creation as you designed it? So we have the kind of things we've been speaking about all in one place. And given where we started the discussion, all linked to the temple, which this myth is linked to from time to time, certainly in the Old Testament, and I would say in Second Temple Judaism too. So, it's multi-layered in a really, really interesting way. Hence, I would love at some point to have more time to study how many of these angles help us to understand what's going on in the myth, so we can read it more richly and more, what I would say, more really. To actually, take the blinkers we sometimes have on. Oh, it's all about kingship. It's all about history. It's all about the covenant. It's all about creation. And to say, no, it's actually much richer than this and much more malleable than this. So what's really happening within this living tradition? Because it's used in so many different and really quite exciting ways. And that's when the myth comes alive. When you read a psalm like that, actually, there are plenty of situations in which, I don't know whether you guys have a Christian faith, I do, where you can ask the question as a Christian, what is God doing with his covenant promises? Because I'm not sure I see them happening around here at the moment.
Andy, where have you been? I mean, I'm not kidding. This is not, what's the word? This is not flattering you. No, but Joshua, what do you think? I mean, I'm trapped here. No, trapped is not the word, but I'm enthralled.
Tío en castellano.
No, I mean,
hablo castellano también. Está bien.
Yeah. I would like to see this in print.
Oh, wow, great. Andy habla español, no. Eso.
Sí, un poquito. Bueno, soy casado con una chilena. Quien habla inglés mucho mejor que yo hablo castellano. Normalmente hablamos en inglés para que podamos comunicar muy bien, pero de vez en cuando hablo en castellano.
Listo.
¿Lo hacemos en español, Andy?
Doctor
Andy. ¿Lo
hacemos
en español o lo hacemos en inglés? ¿Cómo prefieres?
Me parecía que estaban...
¡Wow! ¡Qué bueno!
Estaban haciendo estas cosas para gente de habla castellano. Fue este libro, Las dos caras del misterio, que me pensé...
sí, eso
esos acentos me parece que son de habla castellano.
Yo soy venezolano.
Yo soy hondureño. De Honduras. ¿De dónde? Centroamérica. Yo de Centroamérica, Honduras.
De Honduras.
Sí. Joshua es venezolano.
I speak a little Spanish, but I'm still English.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can speak
but if you want to drop some Spanish statement,
sí, por supuesto.
Feel free. Yeah.
De hecho, ya que el doctor Andy habla español, me encantaría hacer una extensión a la escuela de Alejandría. El problema es que la mayoría de ahí son de habla hispana.
Sí, entonces, de veras.
Si usted estuviese disponible para una entrevista en la escuela, la dirigimos yo y Marv en la escuela de Alejandría. Eso sí, solamente sería
fenomenal.
Si usted se siente
sería
cómodo,
fenomenal.
del mismo tema.
Mándame un correo electrónico.
Yo le voy a pasar su correo a Joshua para que él escriba.
Sí, no, está bien.
Oíme, qué hermoso esto, Joshua. O sea, esto es unexpected. This is a beautiful, unexpected thing happening right now.
I'm very happy because Dr. Andy is keeping me still practicing. I need to improve my English every time anyway, because I'm not always bilingual, writing into Spanish, writing into English. For example, Dr. Andy, I don't know if you know that Florentino García Martínez just published el más reciente Textos de Qumran en español.
I'm going to put it right here on the screen. Just give me a moment.
Yo ya lo compré, está en Portugal.
¿Lo compraste? Enseñalo ahí, enseñalo.
No, lo tengo
lo tenés allá.
Sí, me lo va a traer mi novia.
Ahorita lo mostramos.
También es Alfonso Díaz Macho.
Oh, sí.
Traducido toda su epígrafa.
No, pero Díaz Macho tradujo los apócrifos. Yo estoy hablando de Qumran.
De Qumran. Disculpa. Te entendí mal. Ay, qué bueno. Entonces voy a comprar una copia.
Sí, esta es la actualización en español porque yo tengo la anterior, yo tengo la previa que salió hace como 15 años, ahorita acaba de salir una, ya la compré, ya la tengo allá en español. Es porque yo ya tengo Giza Vermes de Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English, ya tengo esa, y tengo también la de Peter Flink, Abbott Jr. y Eugene Ulrich. Well, I have the facsimilar of Eugene Ulrich of Brill,
Yep.
los tres, y también tengo la traducción al inglés.
Wow. Multilingual.
We have to be. I mean,
Impresionante.
es impresionante. Usted habla español, tenemos que serlo, ya que.
Should we get back to Chaoskampf?
Yes.
Divine Warrior.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
I do have a question actually, and I don't know if I
Yeah,
can.
go ahead.
Now. Because this is one of my recent acquisitions. I don't know if you know it.
I haven't read it, I'm afraid, so I can't comment in any intelligent way about it.
No, it's fine. It's just a collection of archaeological research related to ancient Near East goddesses, and stuff. I did realize something. My question is related to something I found quite interesting on the book of Daniel specifically. Is this? I did realize many scholars, including Michael Heiser, for example, did realize that this figure of the Son of Man in Daniel 7 is it's really hard to find out who is, because he is described as a human-shaped being, but he's, for example, he's coming from with the clouds of the heaven, that it's very, very closer to the rider of the clouds topic, the motif.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we found that the Ancient of Days, this second figure, is very, very similar in many descriptions with, for example, the Ezekiel theophanic apparition. So my question is, when the people says, for example, Heiser or Michael Segal or Andrei Orlov speaks about these two figures are Yahweh, both of them, and somehow or some way, why so hard to find out that the Son of Man could be not just as an angel or as a metaphorical representation? Why so hard to find out that it could be here a kind of binitarian approach to, like, two powers in heaven or two Yahwehs? That's my question.
Okay. I think traditionally the answer has been Judaism is monotheistic. And because Judaism is monotheistic, we have to assume that it could not possibly be putting forward a binitarian view. Now, this has been challenged by a number of people. So Margaret Barker was doing this probably a good 20 years ago. It's been a more fashionable view to entertain. I still find it quite a difficult idea. Hear me out on this one, because I think that Jesus plays with this idea and does something different with it. But I find this a difficult idea because the book of Daniel, I do accept the kind of the scholarly arguments that suggest that it was written in the Maccabean era. Yeah. That does make most sense of the things that are being said to happen in Daniel 7. And if it's written in the Maccabean era, then Jewish monotheism is being fiercely defended. Now, it would appear that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the court tales and Daniel are being thrown into the lion's den and the fiery furnace for their adherence to their monotheistic Jewish faith. And it seems to me a little odd that in chapters 3 and 4, we can have people who are fiercely defending Jewish monotheism, and by chapter 7, the author of Daniel has ditched that. But we're still in the Aramaic part of Daniel here, so we're in that beautiful chiastic structure where 2 mirrors 7, 3 mirrors 6, 4 mirrors 5 in theme and content. which tends to suggest to me there's a very definite unity to these 6 chapters. It seems to me very difficult to suggest that early on in this unified part of the book, we're defending monotheism, and then suddenly we're happy to let go of it in having a binatarian myth. Now, you're absolutely right that the clouds make it look like the figure of the Son of Man is divine. Nobody doubts for 1 minute that the figure on the throne, the Ancient of Days, has got to be Yahweh. There was an article many moons ago in the 1950s by Professor John Emerton of Cambridge University, who said it looks like there's an Ugaritic model for this. We've got Baal the Cloud Rider coming to El, the Father of the Gods, and here we've got the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days. Maybe this is a reflex of that particular myth. That is endlessly debated, and one of the main arguments for it being endlessly debated is that people say, okay, we can see the idea and we can see the parallels, but this is just hundreds of years apart. I think my answer to that would be, well, so is the Ugaritic text, which clearly underlies Isaiah 27:1, which is probably a 5th or 4th century text. So at least 800 years have passed between, even if it's a 6th century text, between Ugarit and Isaiah. And if the exact same phrases that we have in the Ugaritic text and Isaiah can travel down through tradition, why can't the reflex of the myth? Some people suggest that people like me suggesting this are importing polytheism into Daniel, which they quite rightly point out doesn't fit in a text where people are defending Jewish monotheism. I would say it's not polytheistic by the time we get to Daniel. It's a myth that's been used not exclusively, but primarily to describe, as the Cloud Rider is the slayer of the dragons and the sea. It's a myth theme that's used primarily to describe the establishment of Israel as God's covenant people in the way that God promises to establish Israel. Now, if the myth is primarily about the religious and political establishment of Israel, and you're going through the Antiochene persecution, if I can call it that, what are you going to bring out of the bag of Israel's literature in order to encourage people that God is on the throne and that God really will reestablish the nation? Well, why not use the myth that you've been using since the 12th century BC, if Cross is right? So you've been using it for 10 centuries to really encourage people with a well-known story, well-worn story that people believe, and it's kind of seen them through the exile because it was used in Psalm 74. If Psalm 89 is exilic, it was used in Psalm 89. It was used in 2nd Isaiah as a myth to encourage people that God was going to reestablish the nation. If it's been a myth to lament the destruction of the nation and to encourage people prophetically into the reestablishment of the nation, as it certainly was, then surely it's a good myth to pull out of the bag when you're suffering under Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, that's the way I explain that. The problem, of course, is by using this particular mytheme, you've created a theological difficulty. As you put it, Joshua, and as Alan Siegel wrote in that famous book, it looks like there are 2 powers in heaven.
2 powers in heaven, yeah.
Now, what I note in Second Temple Judaism, and I've been writing this chapter in the book I'm working on at the moment, following on as I promised to, from Chaos and the Son of Man. I've noticed that Daniel 7:13-14 is used in different ways in 1 Enoch and for Ezra 13. In 4 Ezra 13, there's no Ancient of Days. There's just the man from the sea who rides on clouds and is given extra aspects of the theophany. I think if I'm right, we have mountains quaking. I'll just get the text up now so I don't lie to anybody on the podcast.
What text would that be, Andy?
This is 4 Ezra 13. And we're
okay, let me
looking
cite it here
at
because
verses
the NRSV comes with
4. A man comes up from the heart of the sea. He flies on the clouds of heaven. So he's identified by all commentators as the Son of Man from Daniel 7:13. Wherever he turns his face to look, everything under his gaze trembles. So we've got that whole earth trembling motif we often get in a theophany. Whenever his voice issued from his mouth, all who heard his voice melted as wax melts when it feels the fire. So we're dealing with that mountains melting like wax motif, only here it's peoples melting like wax. So here, the man from the sea, development of the Son of Man of Daniel 7:13, is the divine warrior. If we go to 1 Enoch, the Son of Man is very definitely subordinate to the Lord of the Spirits. So the Son of Man of the Chosen One is given authority to judge, but 1 Enoch almost entirely wipes him clean of theophanic elements. So it looks like the author of Parables of Enoch, I should say. So 1 Enoch 37 to 71. So it looks like the author of the Parables is saying, yes, this is a judge figure. Understandable. It's a judgment scene in Daniel 7 to 14. And the Son of Man figure is a judge figure. Understandable, given that he appears to be enthroned in Daniel 7:14. But he's got to be subservient to the Ancient of Days. So the Son of Man figure is this kind of weird heavenly figure, which isn't identified as God. So the author of the Parables does something quite different with the potential divinity of the Son of Man of Daniel 7:13 from what the author of 4 Ezra does. Now, I happen to think that the exegesis of Ezekiel is also, so I'm with Peter van der Horst here, the exegesis of Ezekiel is also developing in the vision Moses has where he's enthroned in the heavenlies, because he watches the heavenly battalions of angels go by, and it looks just a little bit like a Son of Man sort of divine warrior figure. What the author of Ezekiel does is to make it so purely visionary that it's only a dream, and it all relates to Moses being the leader of Israel prophetically. So on that bit, I don't follow Peter van der Horst. I follow Howard Jacobson. So you've got different people doing really quite different things with the Son of Man from Daniel 7:13, the period. And I think that what Mark is doing and what Matthew is doing is to very clearly identify the Son of Man as the divine warrior of Israel. So if we just take Mark's gospel for the moment, sun, moon, and stars fall out of the sky before the Son of Man comes in verses 24 and 25. Now, on the study I've been doing in the intervening years between Chaos and the Son of Man and now, I think I've found that the full theophany of the divine warrior never accompanies any principal angel or exalted human being. There is no text I have found where you get a theophanic elements accompanying a principal angel or an exalted human. So if you find theophanic elements attached to a heavenly figure, that's indicating that that heavenly figure is God the divine warrior. Now it's a bit like the clouds. So that's really interesting. Jesus comes on clouds with a theophany. So whilst there are angelic leaders of the heavenly armies, most notably Michael, that part of being divine warrior is devolved in Second Temple Judaism, the cloud riding and the theophany aren't. Now, it's that tends to indicate that by chapter 13, Mark is wanting us to read the Son of Man as being divine. And presumably, because he's quoting Daniel 7:13, he's aware of Daniel 7:14 and Daniel 7:10, where we have the Ancient of Days, which would suggest that Mark is being deliberately binatarian. Now, add to that, you go to the next Son of Man saying in Mark's Gospel, so Mark 14:62, and in answer to the high priest, Jesus says these words. If I get Mark rather than 4 Ezra, that will help. Sorry. Jesus says, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Now, he's been asked, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? So the I am has got to be answering the messianic question. But the very use of ego eimi, when that's been used in Mark 6:45 to 52, in conjunction with Jesus wanting to pass by, in other words, in a theophany, where he's walking on water, quoting Job 9:8, which is what the divine warrior does, tends to suggest that Mark's urging us to read the ego eimi as also a divine, an affirmation of Jesus' divinity. Now, if that's not quite enough, what's fascinating is the charge that comes immediately afterwards is blasphemy.
Yeah.
And that's Jesus' last Son of Man saying.
Yeah.
And if you go to Jesus' first Son of Man saying in the Gospel of Mark, which is in chapter 2, I'll get you the verse now. So Mark chapter 2, verse 10, that is also linked to a charge of blasphemy. Who can forgive sins but God alone?
Yeah.
Well, so you know the Son of Man can. So Jesus deliberately links the Son of Man to the blasphemy charge. At the end, blasphemy comes as the response to Jesus, Son of Man, saying. So Mark has an inclusion here. Son of Man is linked to blasphemy. And in both places, the blasphemy is about what Jesus is doing and Jesus' identification of the Son of Man. Well, you put all that together, there are a few other arguments as well that I want to put forward, but you put all that together and it looks to me like Mark is hoping that we will read his Son of Man of Daniel 7:13 being divine and coming with the theophany in 13:26 of the divine warrior, that he is the divine warrior. So I think that Mark is doing something with Daniel 7:13, just as 4 Ezra is, just as 1 Enoch is, just as I think, but this is a minority view, I'm aware, the Exagogy of Ezekiel 82 is, and that Mark's actually pushed it in the divine direction. So whereas the likes of Joel Marcus and Yarbrough Collins say this language is being used to show Jesus is kind of the most highly exalted of principal angels, or heavenly plenipotentiaries, I'd want to say no, actually, Mark really wants, it's the other side of the line, Mark really wants to define Jesus as the divine warrior and therefore as God himself. And yes, he's dealing in what we might call binatarianism, and this is as early as the 60s. And the question then is, how far back does that go?
Exactly. Okay, I need to chime in here, Andy, because oh my goodness, my head is spinning right now. My goodness, I'm just doing connections, connecting the dots. You know, as Heiser used to say. I'm going to say just to let you talk, Joshua. Okay, I'm all into Christological things. Okay. And you just said that Mark, with all that you just are commenting on, that this could be taken as that he is God, the big boss, the God of Israel, the one true God. This is a way the Mark is portraying, and his audience is picking up on this idea. We take a little bit more because we are outsiders. Okay, but okay. That's a new argument. Again, I'm not lying. Please, God, you are my You're my
Witness.
Yeah, my witness.
Mi testigo.
Because mi testigo. Yeah, testigo. No, I haven't read this song anywhere else. Like I'm not like so that's a new argument in favor, for if we can call it that way, a high Christology.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of the debate there with the what do you call it, the EHCC guys, low Christology versus high Christology, everything. So that caught my attention. Joshua, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot, but it's a topic I really love, and something I found like a lot to say and to do. But first, just as a commentary, I did found that for Ezra is somehow connected with the description of Jesus' second coming in Apocalypse and Revelation 19:11, on the way that is a sword coming out from his mouth, everything is destroying by it. Obviously, the portrait of Jesus in the Revelation is high Christology all the way. Actually, one of my favorite books on this way is Matthias Hoffman, The Destroyer and the Lamb. It's like he make it clear that every topic actually it's a high Christology and angelomorphic Christology, if I'm not wrong, in the book of Revelation. Because somehow Jesus is absorbing all God's portraits. For example, he appoints something that actually G.K. Beale says, and I do believe now, is that, for example, this a cosmic angel of Revelation 10 is actually Jesus, because all the description is given to him. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to buy it, but it makes clear that this angel is quite different in the description.
You're making a case.
Yeah, making a case here. Probably Andy will say, well, but my point is going to this. I did found that this Son of Man figure, and that's something I mean, I enjoy jumping in something I've been concerned of. One of my favorite books of Second Temple Judaism, apart from Enoch, is Revelation of Abraham. And I did found in Revelation of Abraham this very particular angel called Yahoel, that by the name already you have a problem. And second, that this angel is saying that he restrains the Leviathan.
Leviathans, yeah.
Yeah, so you see this angel is Chaoskampf all the way. But at the same time, he's substituting Yahweh's theophanic apparition in chapter 16 of Genesis. Probably in a way to make it clear that Abraham didn't speak directly with God. He's speaking with an angel who represents God. It's interesting. Andrei Orlov made clear that this is a second power. I mean, you cannot deny in the revelation of Abraham, because everything related to this angel is very Yahweh in description. For example, say his hairs are white like snow. And the same description of Ancient of Days, and it's the same description of Jesus in Revelation chapter 1. So my question here is, okay, I'm not saying that this Son of Man has to be God straight away, but it makes clear that for Second Temple Judaism, they cannot just separate the description of this being from another divine agency. It has to be celestial somehow, because, for example, the Son of Man of First Enoch clearly is someone in the divine concept, but this one is actually pre-existent. It says in the same Enoch. And in the fourth Ezra, he says he's coming from the sea, but at the same time, he says he's coming from heaven, and God called it my son. So I don't know if I make clear what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, and there is certainly an exaltation of high angels. I think that cannot be doubted. What you described as a theophany of Yahuwah, I would call an angelophany, because there are quite a few angelophanies like that in Second Temple Jewish literature. And they're not that different from the description that we find in the book of Daniel of Gabriel. So by the time we get to 3 Enoch, we have Metatron, who's virtually indistinguishable from God, but that that's probably a 6th century book. And how early we can drag those traditions back, I don't know. And I tend to veer on the side of skepticism. I don't like to date things early because it suits my argument, because then I feel like my argument is weaker. The Yahuwel's an interesting one, because I've had to come back to Yahuwel in recent weeks, and it struck me that maybe all that's made of his name is not necessarily indicating divinity. If it's read as a theophoric name, Yahweh is God, it's just making a statement that glorifies God. That doesn't necessarily mean that this particular angel is God. The guardian of the Leviathans, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, yes, that's definitely a divine warrior motif. What's fascinating is that Yahuwel, frustratingly, is not actually said to defeat the Leviathans. I think it's in, let me just check, Job 9:3, that we have God set a guard over Job. No, it's not Job 9:3. It's, forgive me, I've not got that.
It's in Job.
Text to hand, but there's a verse in Job where God sets a guard over Job as if Job is a dragon or a chaos monster, and Job asks, "Is this really necessary?" Job 7:12. Am I the sea or dragon that you set a guard over me? So God can clearly set a guard. I'm assuming Job is monotheistic, some kind of heavenly guard over the sea and the dragon. Now, if God can set a heavenly guard over the sea and the dragon, and Yahuwel's given the job of restraining the Leviathans, then that just makes Yahuwel an angel. So I disagree with Andrei Orlov here in his recent book on Leviathan, which I really enjoy. That
supernal serpent, I think it is. Yeah,
that's right. That's the one. That's, if I can put it this way, just an angelic job. And when I say just an angelic job, I think restraining Leviathan, given Job 41, is quite a task. But I take your point. Yes, there are highly exalted angels, but I have to ask the question: what tips the highly exalted angel over into divinity? I mean, if I come back to Mark 6 to give you an example of why I think Mark is doing this. Mark chapter 6, we get 3 wonderful indications of Mark playing with this kind of myth and using it to portray Jesus. He intends to pass the disciples by when they're straining on the oars on the Sea of Galilee, in verse 48. And the passing by, parerchomai, is a theophanic motif, God passing by. So identification with God, because it's God who comes in theophany, who passes by. They see him walking on the sea, quotation of Job 9:8, and it's God who walks on the sea. And then Jesus says to them, take heart, it is I, ego eimi. And we use half of ego eimi ha'on, the Septuagintal translation of Yahweh. Now, if Mark has intended to portray Jesus as a heavenly plenipotentiary as opposed to Yahweh himself, he's done a remarkably bad job of it. Because what he's done is to pick 3 things that Yahweh, God, does, and apply them to Jesus. Yeah. So this is why I think Mark is doing something different from other Second Temple Jewish authors. He's not simply bigging up the sort of the angelic Jesus to the highest point of angeldom from which a later council can flip him over into divinity, either Mark is a lousy author, or he which I don't think he is incidentally. For anybody listening, I think Mark's gospel is fantastic.
Yeah, please don't get it wrong.
Or he's really intending to identify Jesus as God, the divine warrior who walks on the back of the sea.
Yes.
And I think it's the latter. I think that's another piece of evidence that Jesus is picturing Jesus as God, the divine warrior, in order to say, look, this Jesus is divine. And one of the bits I love most about this, picking up on something that Joel Marks has put in his commentary, he's noticed that Huios theou is only used in Mark, apart from Mark 1:1, if it's original, which most people don't seem to think it is used very rarely, but only used in exorcisms. And therefore, when the centurion says, truly, this man is the Son of God, Joel Marcus says this is, the ultimate exorcism. Now, I wish I've scoured his writings and maybe I've missed something, but I wish he spelt out what he meant, because what it looks to me like, building on his observation there, is that Mark is saying, yes, Jesus is the divine warrior. When he's condemned to death because of blasphemy, he's actually identified himself as ego eimi, I am. And what we see happen is ego eimi, I am, the Son of Man, the divine warrior who comes in theophany, is performing the ultimate exorcism, i.e. the defeat of Satan, which is exactly what the demons worried about at the beginning of Mark's gospel, because when the unclean spirit comes into the Capernaum synagogue, he says, have you come to destroy us, humus? There. So we start off at the beginning of Jesus' ministry with a bit of a showdown, which the demon, unclean spirit, reads as, okay, you're against all of us, which is the case because we have the exorcism ministry as a part of the gospel. And then at the crucifixion, the climax of the crucifixion is God in Jesus, the Son of Man, the divine warrior, the one who's twice claimed to be ego eimi, is now performing the ultimate exorcism and defeating Satan and his armies.
I
think there's a coherent theme developing here.
No. This is gold, Joshua.
Yes.
Put it on your calendar. I don't know what you're gonna do, guy, but I'm trembling here.
No, I'm just enjoying this a lot.
No, I'm like I told you, I'm enthralled. Okay, I need to say this, and Joshua, you already know about this. Michael Heiser, arguing his book, The Unseen Realm. And I'm going to, how can I say this? I'm going to put it in tandem here with what Andy just said right now about the ultimate exorcism, because Heiser argued, and he is the only one that I have yet to see someone else doing this in either article, monograph, whatever. But he argued that at the moment of the crucifixion, Heiser argues that was the moment. Harking back to Psalm 22, the bulls of Bashan. And of course, Heiser was a Semitist. So he's, working his way through from the Old Testament, Semitics, ancient Aryans, and whatever. And he argues that at that moment, Jesus he was not only being seen by the human audience, his mom, the beloved apostle, the other apostle from far away. No, Heiser said that the bulls of Bashan was another way to talk about the power of darkness surrounding Jesus at the moment of the crucifixion, because they thought they were killing God. So you are talking about the ultimate exorcism, Andy. If that is true, if that's the case, what happens 3 days later? Boom, resurrection, and the power of darkness didn't see it coming. They were grabbed by the bat. So I'm just trying to, I'm not sure if Andy has read Heiser's work. because this is not something that you are working because you already read it there. It's because this is part of the way you are understanding your own writings, what you've been doing in your research. Okay, so that caught my attention right there. Okay, and I'm gonna leave it right there because I don't want to do eisegesis, eisegesis. I don't want to do that. That sucks. Joshua, you were about to say something?
Yes. 1 second. Yes. I mean, it's a lot I can say here because one of my favorite topics is the spiritual warfare. Something I found specifically talking about Jesus, and this way I approached different scholars and at the same time my own research. I did found, for example, I wrote a very small article, Dr. Andy, if you wanted to read it, it's in English. Don't worry, it's in English. It's my brief approach to Matthew. I think it's 14. When Peter is the only gospel who have Peter going drowned into the water. I suggest that this specific part of Matthew is talking the same description of Chaoskampf of Psalm 18. It's in the same way, because it's Yahweh going from heaven to saving David as the same way as Jesus is saving Peter from water. So for me, it's very clear that it's the same topics here. That's my brief article. I can give it to you, Andy, and you can let me know what you think.
Get my email from Marv. We won't mention it over the podcast, but get my email from Marv and send it to me. I'd love to. Yeah. I wrote a little article on Matthew 14 myself on this topic, and I can email the details of that back if that's of any interest. But you don't have to read it.
No,
I would love to. It would be a privilege. Thank you, Joshua.
Yeah, sure. I would love you to check it out because, for example, my teacher says that he sees that the person drowned out in Psalm 18 is actually Jesus. For me, Jesus is Yahweh, not David. But that's another thing. The point is,
who's your supervisor?
In that one it was Daniel Sladik.
Okay.
Maybe you know who is Dr. Daniel Sladik. My question here goes around to these two ways to see it. I cannot. For me, it's very clear to see that in the Gospels, from how to say this, from a geographical cosmology point of view, Jesus is making a second Exodus. That's something we know. He's making a second Exodus, but into this second Exodus, Jesus is having the same enemies as Yahweh have in the Exodus originally. For example, first we found Jesus is describing the powers of a storm god. He controls the storm, everything we know. That's clearly. But at the same time, Jesus is having a kind of problem with death and with the demons. Something that for me is very similar to Numbers and to Exodus in the same way. So my question here is, and in this case, I jump into Richard Bauckham Christology. He suggests that, for example, the Gospel of John use the same kind of way, the same times ego eimi as for me. I'm very agree with Bauckham in this way. I don't see ego eimi related to Exodus, but related to Isaiah, because Isaiah used ani uhu, I think it's that expression, 7 times at the same time of ways that John is using it. So my question here goes to the Gospels. The writers of the Gospels are trying to make it this intentionally to make it clear that they see in Jesus the divine warrior. I don't know, what do you think on it?
There's an awful lot you've asked there. What I'm doing, I'm going to give a dull answer, I'm afraid, because you said so many things I can't respond to them all point by point.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just want you to remember it.
We need to do
it's
a
really
second.
Important to take it case by case. To examine your intertext carefully, to make sure that there is a case for arguing there's an intertext, And I do love the Psalm 18 one, because most people go to Psalm 145, verse 7. And you're making me think now, which is why I'm excited to read your article. You make a case for the intertext, and then you listen to what the interplay between the two texts might be saying, and what's the textual evidence in the receiving text for hearing what you think you're seeing. It's a bit of a, you could accuse me of giving a rather dull and wooden answer, but I think if we do that, we're more likely to see what's going on. And it's also really important in this area to not repeat the mistakes that are too commonly made when dealing with the Son of Man, which is to assume that people in the same era will be doing the same things, and that the myth will be used in the same ways. If there's one thing that I've discovered looking at this myth, it's used in lots of different ways. It's even used just for plain exaggeration in Asenath's lament, in Joseph and Asenath. And it's like, oh, she's just used it as a poetic motif, a throwaway poetic motif with no special hidden meaning. And then I thought, and why can't it be used like that? Why not?
Not so.
Why does it always have to be used the way you want it to be used to fit your thesis, Andy? So it's really important to do that.
Andy,
Sorry, Joshua.
Yeah, I need to say this, okay, because it's almost 1 hour and a half. As I said at the outset, we want to respect your time. We want to value your time. Okay, Andy, what would you say if we do a second episode where we can go deeper? Because there are some stuff that Andy suggested us to touch on. For example, why to study the divine warrior myth, the value of it. That's one thing. How this might help us understand Second Temple eschatology and Christology. So, Andy, we want to hear it from you, from your very own lips.
Yes,
what would you say?
We have done quite a lot of Christology today. Maybe a bit more eschatology next time. But no, I'd be very happy to. Yeah.
Because I mean, I can be here.
Aceptar tu invitación.
Sí, la invitación. I mean, Joshua and myself, we can be here forever, okay? But we understand we have a life outside social media. So what would you say? We can do a second episode? Would you be?
Yeah,
would that be okay?
Email me. We'll find a mutually convenient time. That's not a problem.
And you say, Dr. Andy, that you will be happy to give an interview in Spanish into La Escuela de Alexandria? Yes.
Yeah. My Spanish is not as good as my English.
Don't worry at all. We adapt to you, but we found that you're in
Spanish, and people seem to understand me. So if you're willing to accept broken Spanish, y aprendí mi castellano en un pueblo joven.
Mira.
Entonces, eso es mejor.
Pero es que tu español es muy bueno. ¿Cuál es el problema?
Se escucha muy bien. No, es cierto.
Se
escucha muy bien.
Tenemos bien.
No,
se escucha muy bien.
Se le nota una seguridad con el español. Eso ya es mucho. Se siente cómodo con el idioma. Así que adelante. En español, una entrevista en la escuela. Listo.
Me parece. Aquí, I just want to, because las dos caras del misterio. He's been following. Thank you for that.
Just to let you know, Las Dos Caras del Misterio is one of my best students I ever have. She having my student in this way, so she is all the time around.
Yeah. So he threw a question here, but I'm not sure where it is. Let me look it up. It's about the angel. Oh, I think it's this one. Oh, okay, it's this one. So, Andy, he asked you, from where would you say that the idea that you can command angels to go to battle for you comes from?
Well, within the myth in the Old Testament, it was largely, apart from the angel of the Lord in Joshua 5, I think it is, it was largely God himself. But in this Second Temple Jewish period, there was a flourishing of angelology. And one of the fascinating things is if you study the Torah, there aren't many angels. If you study the prophets, there aren't many angels. Angels really come into their own in Second Temple Judaism, where they are multiplied by thousands and 10,000s. And with this flourishing of angels, we find that they take on all sorts of different roles. And one of the roles that they do is to help command God's army. I don't know what the origin of that is, whether it's the command of the army of the Lord in Joshua. I'm not sure. Could well be. The great book by Alexander Michalak, Angels as Warriors, which is worth a read on that. But it's certainly the case that it's devolved in this period. So I'm sorry I can't do more than affirm what is there in the texts, and to say this does look like it's not totally, but quite a novelty of Second Temple Judaism. And so when Jesus commands the armies in Mark 13:24-27, you will notice I didn't take that as an indication of his divinity, because it could just be an indication of his being a super angel, because Michael in Revelation 12 commands the angelic armies. The Prince of Light does in the War Scroll. So whilst I think Jesus as Son of Man does command the angelic armies as the divine warrior, I think I can only say that on the basis of establishing Jesus being the divine, Jesus as Son of Man being divine warrior on other grounds, notably his coming on clouds, his coming in theophany, and that little Markan inclusion of Son of Man and blasphemy, the use of ego eimi. On those grounds, I think I could say that Jesus commands them as God.
That's the book you were referring to, right? Angels as Warriors.
Yes, that is. Yeah, okay. It's a great book.
It's pricey because it's from More Civic.
Yeah, it's horribly pricey. Then again, it's my book now. I lose hair every time I look at it on Amazon, which I do.
No. You are not helping me. You know, my pocket is right now very empty, and I don't want to see more Civic. I have 5 books from More Civic, and I'm saying, like, this is the last. I will not buy anything else. And then something new.
Yeah, take a look at the mine.
Sorry.
Here. It's almost $2,000. My goodness, what am I gonna do?
Almost
$200, not 2,000.
Oh, sorry. No, wait. It's it's almost 2,000. Look at this, 1,961. Yeah.
What's that? Why?
Oh, because that's my wish list.
Well, but that's your wish list, because you are very, very. You want everything, but in my case, I have a student pocket. I can take the free of that. My girlfriend will let me. But something important, by the way, was this something I did realize. I just want to actually put it on the table just for next time. Please. Is that I did realize something that's on the angels as warriors, and something I would like to have more clearly, but we could speak on it in a second coming, about the how to say this, the bearers of the name. This is those kind of angels who have God's. I mean, I know this is a kind of development idea from the angel of the Lord who has the name in it. That's Exodus 23, and we find out that in the Second Temple Judaism, even the Son of Man of First Enoch, he bears the name of the Lord. I mean, he has a name. That actually Yahuel is the same thing. That's why in the case of Yahuel, it makes this really weird for me, because they say this angel is very particular. Why he have the name of God on it? Anyway, my point here is, like, I did found that actually it could be that Second Temple Judaism is a struggle to find out who is the angel of the Lord. and probably they try to make this idea of, for example, in Jubilees, the angel of the presence is a way of saying that these are just special angels. That's it. It could be. It's just something I want to keep on the table, but I think that this is an important thing to talk about it.
Definitely. Okay, Andy, this is being awesome.
Yes.
I mean, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Like, I have. It's been an absolute pleasure. You guys are great fun.
And you know you hit us with the Spanish thing. We didn't know. I mean, your Spanish is pretty good. It's pretty.
Adiós a todos. Dios les bendiga.
I mean, we say that we normally learn another language because in the first reason is love. We learn the language of our partner. I'm learning Portuguese. I never planned to, but I just learned Portuguese because my girlfriend speaks to me in Portuguese. It's like I cannot control it. It's just like she absorbs things from my Spanish and I absorb things from her Portuguese. So obviously we will speak another language. So if you speak Spanish and your Spanish is very good, you are invited to the school, 100%.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, definitely. Andy is returning. Do you remember those Marvel movies at the end of the credits? Okay, and they say like, okay, Captain America is returning. So in this case, it would be Andy is returning. Yeah, to hit us.
Andy will return.
Will return. Yeah, Andy will return. You know, and he is going to blow our minds with those.
I will like to the next time you invite Andy to the channel to be in or Scotland or Portugal. I would prefer in Portugal because in Portugal I have my library. Marv knows my library is huge. You will see I have the 7 volumes of the Alejandro Diaz Macho collection of the Apocrypha. I have all that there. So I mean
he loves his books more than his girlfriend.
Yeah. She said, when she wants to threaten me, she said, I will burn that.
Es peligroso.
Okay.
Hermano, es peligroso.
Andy, lads, any final comments? Just let us know, please, before we can wrap it up.
It has been un placer.
Yeah.
And muchísimas gracias.
El placer ha sido nuestro. ¿Sí o no, Joshua?
De verdad que sí. Normalmente quedo como diciendo, bueno, tocamos los temas, pero esto fue una conversación que yo soy de los que dice siempre, son las conversaciones que deberían tenerse en las iglesias, así amplias y abiertas, de distintos temas tan interesantes. Y sí, quedé con ganas. Lamentablemente no podemos alquilarle el tiempo a Andy más, pero I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the easy way that you answer everything. Actually, it makes
I love it. I mean,
that's great. Very pedagogical.
Pedagogical. Yeah. I need to say this, and this is not. I don't do this just to to flatter people. You have a gift, Andy. Typically for scholars, it's very difficult to to bring that complicated, technical, scholarly discussion to the level of a layman level. I personally think you have that gift, which is something awesome.
You. Thank you so much.
And we need to explore and mine it. Yeah, no. We need to mine it and take advantage of that. No, seriously. Oh, look at this. Las dos caras del misterio is saying, Professor Joshua, you need to have Andy a la escuela de Alejandría. Tienen que invitarlo. Okay.
Now you have audience. Sí, ya tiene audiencia.
Sí, ya lo están pidiendo ya, Andy, por supuesto.
No.
Bueno, this is the bad thing. Good things have to come to an end. But we just had fun. This is awesome, and that's all I can say. So everybody, just to let you know, future interviews on June, as I said in the previous interview that we had with Luis Jovel, theologian Luis Jovel, with Dr. Helen K. Bond. I'm sure Andy knows her. So future interviews, we're going to have Beverly Gaventa to talk about the apocalyptic Paul. because I like to flirt with the apocalyptic school. So she's gonna be on the show in June. Also, Robin Faith Walsh. She's gonna be talking about the New Testament in its Greco-Roman literary cultural world. Okay, so keep an eye on that. And everybody on the chat, audience, people, thank you. Thank you, Las Dos Caras del Misterio, everyone who dropped a comment there and came by. Thank you so much with that. For me, all I can say is take care until the next time. Bye now.